So in the beginning, we got together and we talked about, what this game was going to entail, and we kind of went through, separated out tasks, decided who was doing what, and then we broke, and Team 2 went to work creating these 3 tools that are going to be used in Hangman. And then Team 1 went to work in building this main program. And these things can happen concurrently. They can both be doing this at the same time, which is one of the absolute beauties of object-oriented programming and a large reason of why we actually use it, right? And so let's get to this program. So yes, we're going to build an instance of Hangman tools, but we're not just going to print something out. We need to take care of our tasks, which are to control the flow of the game, to get the guess, to see if the letter is in the word, keep track of the number of guesses, let them know if they've won or lost. And so let's go in and just start attacking this as Team 1 to get our job done. And so I'm going to welcome them to the game. So we'll welcome the user. Whoops. And so I can do a little console dot write line and say, welcome to our Hangman game. Something, hope you enjoy. Something like that. Okay. So we've got our little message here out to the user. We will say something like console.writeLine generating a random word. And if we want it to be cute, we could make it seem like it's actually taking a minute to think about it. And so we could come in here and do a little thread sleep and just give it, doesn't have to be long. We could say something like, 200. So that's there's 1,000 in a second. And so this is a fifth of a second. And I could go add in, so console.write. Now, it's not going to work with the write line. I'll show you how it doesn't work first. And then I can add in a dot. And then same thing, I just take this, and I don't typically endorse copying and pasting, but when I'm recording a video and trying to stay there 10 minutes, I love it. Okay, so there's going to be 3 dots. And so you can see here, if I run this program as is, it'll print out those 3 dots. Maybe that was a little quick. Let's do maybe 300 and see how that looks. And then, but the point is, you saw it, it's going down instead of over. And so I might just want to say, instead of doing a write line, which writes out the output and then goes down to a new line, so the cursor's at a new line for whenever it prints again, I can use the write function, which allows me to stay on the same line. So the cursor stays on the same line, and then it goes and prints a new thing. And then once that's all done, then I can do a console.writeLine. This just to give a little dramatic flair, right? So it acts like it's generating something. So you saw how it did it there. Just the dot, dot, dot. And then I can say console.writeLine. All right, I have your word to guess. But we actually have to go get the word. Well, thankfully, Team 2 has written that method for us, and so I can go up here and create. I need some place to store the solution, right? And so I can create a string called solution up here and set it equal to blank to begin with. But then down here in this process, I can come in and generate that random word. So I can say set the solution equal to the instance of the Hangman tools that I've created dot get random word. And so it'll go take, so get the random word for the user to guess. And actually, this whole section is that. I could probably take this comment and move it up here, because that's what I definitely am not an advocate of, you know, commenting every single line. Where did my thing go? But if we kind of do sections, this is what's happening in this section, and then use white space to break out so we can see what's happening, something like that, then that's, to me, a pretty clean look. We're trying to be pretty compact. We don't want to have a ton of white space, but each section of what the program's doing is broken out to make it a little more obvious that this is a section that does that particular thing. All right, so now we need to actually get their guess. And so I can do that by saying console.writeLine, and I can put in here, please enter a letter, right? And then I can make this the section that's get the user's guess. Okay, so please enter a letter, and the user's going to enter it. Now, when they enter it, so I can read it in. So let's make a variable up here, and we typically always declare variables that are for the entire method up at the top of the method. Now, every once in a while, not every once in a while, often we inside a loop or something like that, we can declare variables that are specific to that loop. But as we're declaring them within the loop, we still do it at the top of the loop. We're always at the top. It just makes it easier from a debugging perspective if they're declared together in a group where I can find them easily. And so I'm going to put in here, rather than being, you know, if I want that guess variable now, rather than declaring it here, if I want to change something, it's always tough to go find it if it's not just put together at the top of the program. So that is standard practice, is that we declare all our variables and all our objects at the top of the program unless we need to otherwise. All right, so we can get their guess now by saying, after they've entered it, I can say guess dot ht dot no, sorry, not ht. Guess equals console. I went on autopilot there for a second with my brain. I was already thinking about the next thing and looking at the time. All right, so guess equals console.readLine. So we're going to get their input, but now we need to validate it. Is it actually valid? And so instead of just reading it in, I can do this inside a little loop. So I want to do this as long as the guess is invalid, and I don't know if it's valid or not yet. And so we have a few different kinds of loops. We have a for loop if we know how many times we're going to do something. We don't know how many times they're going to guess something invalid, so that doesn't work. We have a while loop if we can check at the top to see if that guess is valid. And so we could use that here. Actually, we could take this line and put it in the top and then validate it. Put it inside these parentheses and then validate it. But I think what makes the most sense here is actually what's called a do-while loop, which some people argue you don't often use, which I don't agree with. So I can get their guess inside this do-while loop, and then I can check to see, is it valid, by down here in the while statement. So the do-while loop checks its condition at the end, and then it's a little bit weird because typically we don't put a semicolon at the end of a loop. Like at a for loop, we don't put a semicolon out at the end. And a while loop, we don't put the semicolon out at the end because that terminates that while loop before we go look to see what's inside the braces. But in this case, in a do-while loop, this is the end of it. And so we want to put a brace there, or sorry, a semicolon there to say this is the end of the do-while loop. And then our condition inside this do-while loop is going to be, as long as that guess is invalid. Well, how am I going to get whether it's invalid or not? Whether it's valid or not? And so I can say, go out to those Hangman tools and call the valid guess method. And what does the valid guess method want? Well, it wants the guess that they just made, so the guess, and then it wants the letters that have been guessed. Well, we haven't implemented that yet. And so that's something we'll need to do, but just looking at the time, I think we'll do that in the next video. Spencer, out.